Hello everyone, Scrufftards and one and all. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And in this video, we will once again take a look at why Russia cannot kick Ukraine out of Kursk Oblast in 2024. And we're going to take a look at some other things as well, but the main point is that Russia cannot reclaim Kursk in 2024. So we're gonna start things off with this report from Novel Reports that the Ukrainians have reportedly surrounded Russian units at Malaya, Lokhnya, and Russian sources are already reporting dead and injured. And this is Malaya, Lokhnya, and as you can see here on the Ukraine control map, Ukraine has pushed in on the flanks of this town, this village, and apparently have begun to encircle it in full. And this town is located here. So right smack in the middle, the Russians are trying to hold it, and Ukraine has been pushing out on the flanks and have now apparently been able to surround some units. And the Russian sources are not happy about it. And now for something interesting, the Ukrainian army has released an official map of the progress in the Kursk Oblast. And here we have an official map of Ukrainian successes, advances in Kursk. And here you can have the old ISW map. And ISW has since adopted or adjusted to suit this map. As you can see, quite some differences. These tendrils have been removed altogether. And they have also adjusted the Ukrainian gains here in the west as long as up around Koronevo. But most importantly, these things here have been withdrawn. If that is because Ukraine has fallen back, it's a bit unclear, but they are clearly not represented on the official map. But we should remember that the other day we saw reports that Russia was shelling this area heavily with indirect fire and airstrikes and what have you. So that might be one of the reasons. Maybe Ukraine fell back from these positions because they couldn't push on with the forward reconnaissance and support them with the proper mechanized units and what have you. Potentially, or it's just a matter of Ukrainian reconnaissance ending up in firefights. We know Ukrainians have been ambushed in these locations, so it could be recon units that got ambushed, and then when the reports came back in, ISW map added this as Ukrainian advances, when in fact it was only reconnaissance moving around in basically within Russian lines. But anyway, we have an official map, and from it we can gather that Ukraine has pushed out much further to the west. They have secured territory at the river, so the Russians at Koronevo and the Russians in Glushkovo are now cut off from each other, and Ukraine has also pushed in much further into the town of Koronevo itself, and they've also made some gains down here, important as well, in the southeast. And if we compare the ISW map, that is now a copy of the official map, we can compare it to Andrew Perpetua. And Andrew is pretty spot on, isn't he? He's kind of on top of things, unless he has made some adjustments based on this map, to be honest. Ukraine control map, broad strokes looks the same, doesn't it? It's not as detailed, but in broad strokes it does fit what we're seeing here from the official map and ISW. And same thing goes for the UL Live map. It looks pretty much spot on as well for the most part. So these four mappers are now in sync and looking pretty similar all across the board, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, the Andrew Perpetua map that showed us this area a day or two ago, all of these are airstrikes and missile strikes, artillery strikes, and what have you. I mean, dozens and dozens of hits, maybe hundreds, aimed at this point here. And this is the old map with the tendrils, and this is the new map. So maybe, just maybe, Russia managed to halt these advances with this massive artillery strike and force Ukraine back to something more like this. Maybe Ukraine fell back for tactical reasons, or maybe the ISW team had misunderstood the reports of Ukrainian advances in the area. But one of the more interesting things about this official map is the lines at Koronevo. As you can see here, Ukraine has pushed out well into half of the town according to the official map, and ISW has adjusted to this situation, and that means if we zoom in on the Ukraine control map that Ukraine has pushed out all the way to the river here that splits Koronevo in two. So these suburbs here are now in Ukrainian hands and they are at the river. So the question is, can they get across? Can they cross their bridges, or can they get across elsewhere to challenge the Russians that are now holding the city proper? I mean, we can see here a pincer move. Ukraine is beginning to move in around north of Koronevo. They have cut the Russians off here by the river, so they can now move up this way as well. And the Ukraine control map has also indicated that Ukraine is about to begin this encirclement of Koronevo. So the Russians holding the city looks like they might be in trouble in the coming week. And Andrew Perpetua has also highlighted that Ukraine has pushed out all the way to the river, maybe because that is what the official map is telling us. And as you can see, he's also showing us that they're pushing up north and that they have pushed out to the river here. As you can see, if we zoom in on the ISW map, Ukraine is right on the river, and that can allow Ukraine to push north along the river to reach the highway and get in behind Koronevo, especially if they push in from this way as well. They can link up and surround the entire town. And then it's only a matter of time before Koronevo falls in full to Ukraine. So that was some of the changes on the map. We have an official map, very interesting. Now we're gonna move on to what I speculate might be Ukraine's objectives within the Kursk Oblast. So what are Ukraine's objectives in the Kursk Oblast? I think that Ukraine is after the Sudzha county, the Koronevo county, and the Glushkovo county, or Glushkovsky Rayor. Rayor is akin to a county, I believe. You have the oblast, that is kind of like a state, and then the oblast is divided into rayors, counties basically, right? And I think this is the extent of Ukraine's incursion. Ukraine never planned to go further, and they have no intentions of going further either. They made a strong push northward, surrounded Sudzha, and made it very early on clear that they were heading north for Koronevo and Snagost and the river. And they've taken Sudzha. Sudzha is a vital logistical hub, which is a large blow to Russia, obviously. But now the point of holding Sudzha is to hold the flank. This is the anchor holding the eastern flank. And the important part of the operation was to make this move north to Koronevo and the river, because when this now was achieved, Ukraine instantly launched strikes against these main bridges that allowed Russia to move in forces and logistics, supplies, and what have you to the troops holding the Glushkovo county. And now we're seeing Ukraine pushing westward in the center here, as well as down here along the river. This is an older map, obviously, as you can see, it has the tendrils. I made this map a couple of days ago, so that's why. And now they're pushing in here westward into Glushkovo County. We also have reports that Ukraine is pushing in from the west as well. They potentially have troops in Tetkino, a border town. Russia tried to blow some bridges, but it seems as if Ukraine has managed to reach the town anyway. So we might have a push from the west as well, combined with this push here from the east. I mean, it was quite clear, to me at least, now in hindsight, that Ukraine wanted to make this move to Kornevo, the river, blow the bridges and isolate Glushkovsky, Rayor, the county, and secure this county, secure this county, and this county. And I think what Ukraine is after is to potentially try and push out this far. And why is that? Well, you have 4 access points to this region, and it's these 4 highways. And Ukraine wants to push out and control the highways as far away as possible, but without overextending. And this crossroad here, this fork, I think is what Ukraine is after in the south. They have forces fighting in this area as we speak. I don't think they want to. They may want to push out to Malaya and the river, but that may be overextending a bit. I think this is as far as they will go down here, especially now that Russia has forces in the area. Over here, I think they wanted to push out to Bolshoye, Soldotskoye. We had reports early on that Ukraine was operating here, that they are trying to operate here. But Russia held a small town here that I think at the moment is in Ukrainian control. And if that is the case, then Ukraine can push out further to this town, because here you have, as you can see, bodies of water that can help them defend the area on this flank. And over here we have seen Ukraine trying hard to push north, and that has they have now fallen back a bit. But same thing here, they want to push out along this highway that leads into the area, into Sucha County, into Kornevo County. You have bodies of water, a lake and stuff like that, that they could use for defensive purposes up in the north. And likewise, when we move over here, if you push out from Kornevo, you have this small river, an obstacle in the terrain with a bridge that Ukraine can utilize to hold the line along this defined feature in the terrain. And you have this greater same river as well, a natural obstacle that is difficult for Russia to cross now that the bridges are blown. So this is what I think is the objective in Kursk. Ukraine wants to go in and grab these 3 counties and hold them so that they can use them for negotiation purposes whenever there are peace talks. Because they don't seem to have enough forces to push out further. They don't have manpower to push to Rilsk and so on. So this is, like I said, the extent of what they will try and achieve. Maybe they will be satisfied with holding what they have now that Russia is moving in, preventing Ukraine to push out further. In that case, I think they will try and hold this river here at Kornevo, and maybe this river down here. But I think they still want to reach Bolshoye, because this seems like a very natural defensive position on the eastern flank. Question is what they will do over here, if they will just try and fortify along the lakes and rivers and along this line here. But like I said, it seems more than likely that this was the main goal of the operation. And once they've taken Glushkovsky County, you will probably see them slowing down a bit, fortifying their positions, and then you have operational success in the Kursk Oblast. And right, so here we have Glushkovsky Rayon, the Glushkovo County, and as you can see, Ukraine has pushed out the river. This gives them that excellent opportunity to push north to surround Kornevo, but more importantly, they can push in to Glushkovsky County, and they are pushing in the center. They push down along the bridge along the border, and also they are now able to follow the river in the north. And if we take a look at Tetkino here, this border town, you can see Ukraine has pushed in across the border, and according to Deep State, they may be operating within Tetkino itself. This is a factory area, a big factory, right next to a bridge supposedly blown, but maybe Russia didn't do a good job, and Ukraine has now moved in across that bridge and are now trying to secure the factory on the far side. And if this is the case, if Ukraine grabs the Kino, what is preventing more Ukrainian forces from pushing in from this way? Apparently there are 3,000 Russians holding this county. We'll see if that is enough to hold off the Ukrainians if they're pushing in from two sides. But I mean, it's only a matter of time before this entire area falls to Ukraine, and then they have expanded their the occupied territory by, I don't know, 40-50%. So yeah, this is looking like a done deal, a operational success on Ukraine's part. Also, since Ukraine has blown up the three main bridges in Glushkovsky County, Russia has obviously tried to counter this by building pontoon bridges. We had one here that was blown up, and then we have three more built up here. And the reason why we have them on the map is because of this happening. Ukrainian drones flying in, attacking the trucks and the equipment building these bridges. And the drones have also guided in artillery and missile strikes and what have you, taking out these pontoon bridges. So Russia is having trouble setting these things up because the Ukrainian drones, they are following the length of the river, looking for signs of Russian activity. And as soon as this happens, as soon as they spot these things, the drones fly in and go to work, and Russia just doesn't have a chance to utilize these pontoon bridges for any length of time. And there we go. And I also want to take a closer look at these 4 points because I think they're interesting. And we're gonna start down here and then move up this way, and end over here. So we're gonna take a look at what Ukraine is trying to reach and what they want to defend at the extreme perimeter of this incursion. And southeast, where Ukraine is trying to move into the towns of Giri, or the villages of Giri and Belitsa, you can see here Ukraine is operating outside of their control territory, so this is contested, this is in the gray zone, and Russia is trying to defend these two villages, these two towns. And what is Ukraine doing here? Well, they are after these three roads here, this intersection. As you can see, you have a bunch of bridges, you have a river, and if Ukraine can move in here and control this, they effectively cut off Russian reinforcements from coming in this way. It's going to be hard for Russia to fight their way across the river along these highways, especially if Ukraine manages to push out all this way. It has been suggested that they've been trying to reach Malaya. They may well try that because, I mean, you have the river system here. That would be really nice defendable positions that would well and truly force Russia to take the long way around to get troops into the eastern flank of this incursion. So down here in this area, they want these two towns because of this road system here that is vital for the Russians to bring in reinforcements and supplies and what have you to this area. And moving north a bit, Bolshoi, Solatskoye, Ukraine is pushing out towards this position. They've taken Martinovka. Russia held this town for quite some time, and now Ukraine has taken over it. Here you can see that we have the gray zone almost up at Bolshoi, Solatskoye. Ukraine is operating just outside of the town, and they want this town because you can see here bodies of water, rivers, lakes, and you have a couple of bridges along the way. This is a good spot to defend. Bridges. Where was the second bridge? It's in the town itself over here. Duh. So yeah, you have rivers, you have lakes, swamps, and that will funnel an enemy, and you have these open fields, farmland that gives you long lines of sight to set up ambushes and covering fields of fire and what have you. So I think that is why they want to push out to this town. You have this main highway. It branches out to smaller roads as well. So it's an important hub to hold because heavy equipment, trucks used for logistics, tanks and other armored vehicles, the general rule is that they behave like water, right? The path of least resistance. So you can kind of predict how logistics and armored formations will move because they will move along the path of least resistance, and that means roads. So if you have a hub like this, where you have a big main highway, several small roads that leads out all over the countryside, then this is where logistics will flow through. This is where enemy armor will flow through because they can move out and reach multiple locations at speed moving along roads, right? Path of least resistance. So if you take this, you cut off the path of least resistance and deny the enemy the chance to maneuver freely, right? So that is why I think they want this small village, because of all these roads, and you have a lot of rivers and swamps and bogs and lakes in the area that should make it, by looking at the map at least, should make it an easily defended area. And taking a look at the third location, here we go. The northern highway that comes in from the north, heading straight south towards Sucha. Here we have Andrew Perpetua and the Ukraine control map, both showing that Ukraine has pushed out far, trying to reach Kromsky Byki. Ukraine, the ISW map, now adjusted to the official Ukrainian map, also shows that Ukraine is trying to push north in this area towards Kromsky Byki, and the reason is the same. A small village, main highway, and smaller roads leading out from it, and that is why it's important to hold it. Again, path of least resistance. If you can take this one, Russia cannot utilize these country roads to move logistical trucks around. They can't move reinforcements around at speed. So that is why you want to control it. And you have valleys around it. You have lakes and stuff like that. As you can see here, take a look at all of these valleys in this area and all the farmland. And so if you set up positions on the far side of the valley, you can fire straight across at this road, and it makes it difficult. You can also fire along the valley here as well. So I think that is why Ukraine wants this. It appears to be a reasonably defendable position in a valley, long lines of fire all around, and you cut off Russia's ability to move in forces at speed into the area. And last but not least, a bit of a stretch maybe, I'm thinking Pushkarnoe, right? Here you have a small bridge over a shallow river system or stream. Here you can see it right here. And if you hold here, you make it more difficult for Russia to move in towards Koronevo. And then they have to find ways to cross these swamps, these streams, these rivers, irrigation systems, and whatever it is we're seeing here. May not be worth it, but this river continues up this way, kind of becoming a natural obstacle, a natural feature in the terrain that you can base your defenses along. So that's why I'm thinking they want to push out this way. It's just natural to set up defenses along features in the terrain. So that's what I'm thinking. They want to follow this small river system and defend it, and that includes holding Pushkarnoe and this here small bridge. So yeah, so we began down here. You can see the crossroad, the forking road. You have rivers out there. They may want to try and push out all the way here to Malaya potentially. I mean, it makes sense. You have bodies of water out here as well. Uh, but I'm thinking maybe this river here, holding the crossroad potentially. Bolshoya, you can see the river here, and like I said, you had the Grunya River here up at that last bridge I was talking about in the previous slide, and that nicely links up with the same river, by the way. Koronevo has a river as well that acts as a good second line of defense, or maybe a primary if they fail to push out as far as I think they want to go. And then it appears as if they are trying to push this way to that village in that valley system holding this stretch of road. So yeah, basically, Ukraine want Sudzha County, they want Koronevo County, and Glushkovo County. They don't want to push out any further. They don't have the manpower for it. They can't hold uh, all that terrain. They can't defend a front line that is that extended. And by blowing the bridges here, they don't need to have as much troops holding this area. If they just keep a close eye on the river where the pontoon bridges may show up, they can just move troops around and counter Russian positions north of the river. So they can allocate more forces away from this area to hold the perimeter in the north and the east. So yeah, I think that's what's going on. I think this is a diversion. I don't think they're heading for Rylsk because the same river moves north. Rylsk is on the western side of the river, so you can't reach it from Koronevo. They've blown the bridges here, so you can't reach it from the south unless you put up pontoon bridges. But you know, Ukraine has proven that that is easily countered. So Ukraine will probably not push northward towards Rylsk, and that leaves Ukraine pushing in from the west across the border along the E38 highway, and that is a long haul to eventually reach Rylsk. And Russia will have a lot of manpower in the area soon enough that will be able to counter such a move. So this, I believe, is a distraction, diversion to redirect forces that could be fighting at Koronevo, and they are now forced to hold whatever's going on up here instead. So, Ukraine's objectives. Well, Ukraine secures vital territory that can be used as high-value bargaining chips during eventual peace negotiations. Ukraine has taken more than 1,000 POWs, some claim 2,000 by now, according to reports, which will allow Ukraine to free an equal amount of Ukrainians in Russian captivity. Ukraine has shown the Russian people that Russian leadership is corrupt, incompetent, and not trustworthy. If Russia wants to reclaim lost territory in Kursk Oblast, they must move troops from other theaters along the main front line, potentially allowing Ukraine additional gains in those regions as the Russian lines gets weaker. So what is Russia's response to all of this? Well, apparently Putin has given the order that Kursk is to be liberated by October 1st, in like a little bit more than a month from now, which seems a bit far-fetched, to be honest. But the order is at least to stay focused on reaching Pokrovsk and taking Toretsk. And I mean, why not? They are having successes in this area, and they are still pushing. Ukraine is unable to hold Russia back, so why not keep pushing? Why not keep the eye on the ball? Because Ukraine probably wanted Russia to panic when they began this operation, hoping that Russia would allocate a bunch of manpower early on to counter this incursion. And I think Russia figured that out and said, let's keep calm, do not overreact, do not panic, keep the eye on the ball. And the ball is Pokrovsk and Toretsk, right? Do not panic, do not let Ukraine gain an upper hand in these two theaters of the war. So Russia slowly began to allocate enough forces to begin containing the incursion rather than fighting Ukraine back and trying to push them out. Slowly moving troops from various places to contain rather than contest. And now we know that Russia is trying to put together an ad hoc northern fighting force to counter and throw out the Ukrainians. And they're picking troops from a bit of all over the place. Some from Kharkiv, some from Kupiansk, some from down at Kherson and other places, but not from Toretsk and Pokrovsk. These units are focused on pushing towards these two towns to achieve these goals. Meanwhile, they're slowly moving random units from here and there to counter this incursion, and they have the manpower. Kharkiv started with something like 50,000 troops, probably down to maybe 45,000, 40,000 now. They can spare 1,000 or 2,000 troops. Same thing for the Kupiansk and Crimea front line. Remember, was it last year when they gathered 90,000 troops apparently to launch an assault along this front line? Some of those guys must be still around. So 1,000 or 2,000 from here, and same down here. The rumor is that Russia has 100,000 troops in this area because they started out with 40,000, and then Ukraine started building up that big amphibious force that now numbers 200 assault craft. And because of that, and they released some videos showing us how they were training beach landings. Because of that, apparently Russia gathered 100,000 troops in this area to counter a potential amphibious assault. So if they can grab 10,000, maybe 20,000 from down here and ship them all over here, or maybe just over here and then 20,000 moves up here and 20,000 moves over here, then Russia has at least some forces that can begin operations and begin to push in and take the fight to the Ukrainians. I also want to highlight, this is pretty interesting. A couple of days ago we had this unit on the map, the 98th Airborne Division, located here. They are now gone, and I don't know where they are. They are no longer geolocated in the area surrounding the incursion. So I wonder what happened here. Where did they go? That's just weird. Really interesting. But anyway, this massive incursion, Putin wants the Ukrainians gone by October 1st. So that means they have to grab a lot of forces from all over the place and get them up here to try and counter and throw out the Ukrainians. And to highlight it, we have this report from RBC Ukraine that the Russians are now trying to deploy a mix of units and from all fronts except Pokrovsk and Toretsk. This in turn indicates that the enemy currently has very few free forces and reserves. Secondly, it shows that the limited successes in Pokrovsk and Toretsk weigh more on the Kremlin scales than regaining control over Kursk. Like it says, right now the enemy is pulling troops directly from the front line. For example, 2 brigades have been withdrawn from the Zaporizhia region, and 2 airborne assault battalions have been taken from the reserves in the Kherson direction. The 810th Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet, which was in the Kherson direction. You have a Marine Brigade that fought around Volodar, and so on. So you're seeing that they're beginning to move forces from all over the place and shipping them up to Kursk. So what does all of this tell us? Well, it tells us that Russia does not want to use its large force of conscripts, 250,000 strong, to counter the incursion in Kursk, because, I mean, that will be a PR disaster when these young boys, 18, 19 years old, die on the battlefields or are taken prisoner en masse by the thousands. Russia does not want to use tactical nuclear warheads to protect the Russian soil, which they have threatened with multiple times, and so Ukraine has proven that that's another red line that is nothing but a lie, which should convince Western allies of Ukraine to allow Ukraine to use more weapons and also provide Ukraine with more weapons, since Russia will obviously not use nuclear weapons. And like I just said, Russia does not have huge amounts of reserves, resources, or equipment left, since they're forced to relocate vital manpower, supplies, and vehicles from the fighting within Ukraine. And also, like we already pointed out, Russia will not give up on its campaigns to conquer Pokrovsk and Toretsk, which makes sense. They have success there. Taking Pokrovsk is vital for the war effort. Toretsk not as much, but Pokrovsk definitely. They are advancing. They have success on the battlefield, and taking Pokrovsk is vital for the war effort. And Putin has supposedly given the order that Kursk is to be liberated by October 1st. With the lost territory in Kursk defended by some 10 to 15,000 Ukrainians, that will not happen in 1 month as Putin wants. For Russia to have any operational success, covering much smaller areas to top it off, Russia requires 6 to 8 months of operations that will result in at minimum 50,000 casualties, dead and wounded. So for Russia to successfully re-establish control over Kursk Oblast, they need to gather a force that can sustain 50,000 casualties, dead and wounded, and after that still be a credible force along the border. To gather such a force that will fight over an extended period of time, 6 to 8 months, Russia has no other choice than to severely weaken its positions along the established front line within Ukraine. Because as the battle for Kursk continues month after month, Russia will need to allocate more and more troops and equipment to make up for the losses in the Kursk Oblast. So, in short, Russia will not secure Kursk in 2024. I mean, if Russia wants to reclaim all of this, and I mean, they're gonna have to attack through these four main approach points. That's just how it is. This is where they will be basing their attacks from. This is where they can move in reinforcements and supplies. This is where they can move wounded out of the area. So they're gonna push in along the highway and then fan out as they get closer to the line of contact. And that is why Ukraine wants to defend these four highways. I mean, first of all, they're going to have to fight their way through Koronevo, and at some point they're going to have to move in and push their way through Sudzha. And Russian mill bloggers, they fear that Sudzha will become another Avdiivka. And at Avdiivka, Russia lost some 47,000 dead and wounded. So even if it's not as bad as Avdiivka, say Russia loses 20,000, that's still a huge number of troops lost, right? And they need to account for that. They still need to have enough manpower to, once that battle is won, to have enough manpower to keep fighting, to keep pushing, and they need to take those forces from somewhere, right? Same thing with Koronevo. So say Koronevo is not as bad as Sudzha, so Russia only loses 10,000. I mean, that's still 30,000 between these two cities, these two towns. And add to that all the losses in between as they're pushing in towards the town, as they're pushing in through between the towns and trying to push into Glushkovsky County, right? I mean, they're going to need an insane amount of troops. They're going to lose so many soldiers, and they still need to have enough troops to keep pushing to liberate all of the Kursk Oblast. And those troops need to come from somewhere, right? And to highlight, yes, if they push in this far, the next step is to push into Glushkovsky County, and which will become a deadly bottleneck where Russian forces are funneled into kill zones as they attack Ukrainian trenches and defenses, because I believe Ukraine will fortify this county like hell. They know there won't be a massive attack from the north, maybe air assault with helicopters, but I doubt it. That's a big if. I doubt that will happen. The main attack will come from the east, and Ukraine will set up defenses within Russia and outside, south of the border. And I mean, it will be hell on earth trying to push through all of this. And having fought at Koronevo and Suja and taken the territory here in between, then having to force their way through here, I mean, thousands will die. Thousands will die. You saw what happened at Stepovo, north of Avdiivka, where Russia just pushed and pushed and pushed, and they could not enter that tiny, tiny village. And it's going to be similar here on a larger scale, where you have this narrow choke point, this bottleneck, and Russia will just send in waves of attackers, and Ukraine will hold one defensive line, then another, then another, then another. This is going to be costly as hell for Russia, and it will take months and months for them to make any headway, is my guess. Russia launched the Kharkiv offensive on the 10th of May 2024. It is now the 20th of August when I'm making this video. Russia began that offensive with 30,000 troops against poorly constructed and ill-prepared defenses with few troops in place. It did not take long before Russia had to allocate another 20,000 troops to support the Kharkiv campaign. After 4 months and 50,000 troops committed, Russia has little to show for along the Kharkiv front. Certainly not enough to convince Ukraine that 50,000 troops are enough to push Ukraine out of Kursk. Too many sounds there. It's not easy, the English language. So give me some slack. God damn it. Moving on. Anyway, Russia will need a substantial force to dislodge Ukraine and secure Kursk, and they will need time to do so. The battle for Kursk will continue well into 2025, if Ukraine is committed to defending the territory they've gained so far, that is. 4 months from now, we are in December, just short of Christmas, a few days away from 2025. Chances are that Russia has not managed to secure Kursk Oblast by then. Not by a long shot. And I mean, Russia is currently pushing towards Pokrovsk, right? And they're also aiming for Toretsk and potentially Chasiv Yar. And once, I mean, this is going to be Avdiivka and Bakhmut all over again. Same thing here, same thing here. And on top of that, they're having issues at Vovchansk, right? Now Russia wants to throw in Sudzha into that mix. So you're going to need 50,000 troops, dead and wounded, to grab Pokrovsk. I don't know, something similar at Toretsk. Maybe 30,000 at Chasiv Yar. This isn't happening. They're not gaining any ground here. I mean, take a look. They're being pushed back steadily. They were down by the river, and now they've been pushed back. I mean, it's not working. Now they want to try and take Sudzha and lose another 30, 40, 50,000 troops. I mean, it's not sustainable. They can't fight in these cities at so many cities all at once, right? It's just going to cost them insane amounts of forces. So if they want Sucha, I mean, they can't grab Vovchansk, they can't grab Chasiv Yar. Ukraine will push them back. Question is if they can sustain an attack on Toretsk. And I mean, they're hell-bent on reaching Pokrovsk, so I'm thinking this will happen no matter what. But this may suffer because of Russia trying to grab Sucha. And these two, Chasiv Yar and Vovchansk, will certainly not fall. These cities will not fall to Russia because Russia will focus on Sucha instead. And yes, 2025 could potentially be the year when things turn around because Russia is struggling at the moment with keeping its railways operational. Due to the sanctions, Russia cannot keep their trains in working condition. Ukraine's attacks against Russian oil refineries and facilities is starting to have an effect on fuel availability within Russia, and that includes the Russian army. The Russian MOD, the Ministry of Defense, has stated that Russia needs to produce 4 million 152mm artillery shells per year to be able to win in Ukraine. But Russia has only a capacity to produce 1.3 million of these shells per year. Meanwhile, during 2025, the West will be able to produce 3 million 155mm shells per year. And in 2025, Ukraine will receive state-of-the-art infantry fighting vehicles in the shape of the Lynx and the CV-9035. And Ukraine has been promised 230 CV-9035s that will be provided by Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And also by 2025, Ukraine will be flying a large number of F-16 fighter jets, providing the Ukrainians with much needed firepower, advanced firepower in the skies over Ukraine. And returning briefly to Kherson here, in the south of Ukraine, Ukraine has received closer to 200 assault craft, including 16 armored fast assault boats, the Combat Boat 90, armed with 50 cal machine guns, miniguns, anti-ship missiles, and what have you, capable of transporting 18 troops per vessel. So, I mean, if you have 16 and each carries 18 troops, I mean, Jesus Christ, you can get one or two companies ashore in just 10 minutes. So they have this very powerful, capable amphibious force ready to launch an assault across the Dnipro or across the bay and take the Russians by surprise. So what happens if Russia begins to move troops around and they begin to move troops away from Kherson? Will Ukraine try and exploit that advantage in Kherson and launch an amphibious assault and establish a foothold on occupied territory? You never know. You never know. So, yes, this was a long video, a lot of rambling, to finally come to this conclusion. Russia will not reclaim Kursk in 2024 because Russia needs 6 to 8 months to achieve operational success. Russia needs a substantial force from the front lines of Ukraine to counter the incursion. Such a force could weaken other sections of the front line. In 2025, Ukraine will have world-class vehicles, a steady supply of artillery ammunition, and F-16s will be operating along the front line, potentially even in Kursk Oblast. Well, that's it. I am super tired. It's been a long day and I've been working on this video, trying to get it to work, trying to get the technical issues to not cause me trouble. So yeah, I'm super tired, and I think that may have shown in the video as well. Anyway, hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch Ukraine. Give them hell.